Some changes in sports are predictable. Trades, free agent signings, and the occasional heated press conference. But when the Washington Mystics announced they were uprooting 2 home games and shifting them to Baltimore, everyone knew something bigger was brewing. Immediately, fans were asking, why Baltimore? And just as important, why now? Some changes in sports are predictable. Trades, free agent signings, and the occasional heated press conference. But when the Washington Mystics announced they were uprooting 2 home games and shifting them to Baltimore, everyone knew something bigger was brewing. Immediately, fans were asking, why Baltimore? And just as important, why now? The easy answer points to seats, ticket sales, and capitalizing on the frenzy around the WNBA's newest superstars. But when you look closer, you'll see it's about Angel Reese's hometown pride colliding head-on with Caitlin Clark's unstoppable spotlight. This decision blindsided many loyal supporters in Washington. After all, the Mystics have a perfectly decent arena in DC. So why the sudden relocation? Some are calling it a marketing stunt. Others a strategic move to stir up rivalry-based hype. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, yet all of these theories miss the bigger picture. There's tension in the air, and for anyone who's been following the Reese-Clark storyline, it's more than just a venue shift. It's a symbolic shift of power, influence, and clout within the WNBA. Before we plunge into the details of how this decision rattled fan bases, the deeper story beckons. This isn't just about scheduling or even about 2 individual players. There's an undercurrent of something much larger. A league that's starting to see glimpses of massive popularity, propelled forward by controversies, and the electric appeal of a single name that keeps popping up, Caitlin Clark. But that's not the entire story, because Angel Reese and her supporters aren't about to bow down. They see this as home court advantage, a perfect opportunity to reclaim the spotlight. Yet you have to wonder, did the Mystics set her up to shine or to stumble? But that was only the beginning. When the Mystics announced that games featuring Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever would move to CFG Bank Arena in Baltimore, reactions came swift and loud. Some saw it as a genius marketing coup, the kind of decision that cements the WNBA's growing popularity by transporting the hottest rivalry to a brand new location. After all, Baltimore is Angel Reese's backyard, a place that takes immense pride in every local star. If you put 2 competitive forces like Reese and Clark in the same city, you're guaranteed a buzz. Yet, while fans in Baltimore rejoiced, Mystics supporters were stunned. They'd been loyal season ticket holders, expecting to see these games at the standard home venue in Washington, D.C. Instead, they suddenly had to rethink travel, tickets, and the overall vibe of the upcoming showdown. Quickly, 2 rival camps formed. Those who believe this is a blatant cash grab tapping into the hype around Clark, and those who insist it's a respectful nod to Reese's roots. But here's the twist. The Washington Mystics could have simply moved these high-demand games to a larger arena in DC itself, like Capital One Arena. It's been done before. Why leapfrog to another city entirely? Critics see it as an orchestrated stunt. Maybe the Mystics front office realized that any game involving Caitlin Clark is basically guaranteed to sell out. And relocating to Reese's home turf sets the stage for a narrative that's pure sports entertainment gold. It's a storyline brimming with hometown pride, potential heartbreak, and the unstoppable force that is Clark's fan draw. However, some in Reese's camp are whispering about possible betrayal. Are the Mystics truly honoring Angel's Baltimore roots, or have they placed her under an even harsher microscope? If her performance lags, even for a moment, she risks letting down her local supporters on a national stage. It's a high-stakes gamble. From the owner's perspective, if the seats fill up fast, and they will, all that matters is the bottom line. But for Reese, the emotional toll of performing in front of her home crowd against the biggest name in women's basketball right now could be astronomical. There's no way to know the final outcome, but one thing's certain. These relocations have already set social media ablaze with rumors, hopes, and fears. Yet the real catalyst behind this entire spectacle is a rivalry that's become larger than life. Some basketball rivalries are born naturally on the court, fueled by competitive spirit alone. Others emerge from viral moments, dramatic gestures, and ongoing social media chatter. And that's exactly where the Clark versus Angel Reese saga began. Their friction dates back to their college days, when each boasted staggering stats, championship dreams, and a flair for the theatrical. Fans gravitated toward the tension, fueling flame wars on Twitter, Instagram, and everywhere in between. Angel Reese is no stranger to the spotlight, especially after her high-profile collegiate success and a wave of coverage that often emphasized her swagger and confidence. She's known for hitting the glass hard, throwing down emotional reactions, and keeping fans entertained with her outsized personality. Opposing fans either love it or love to hate it. Clark, meanwhile, burst onto the scene as a once-in-a-generation offensive threat, draining three-pointers from distances that boggle the mind and orchestrating her team's offense like a seasoned pro far beyond her years. But it wasn't simply the numbers that made them polar opposites. It was the different ways they handle fame. Clark has a kind of laid-back relentlessness, letting her performance do most of the talking, whereas Reese thrives on wearing her emotions visibly, taunting opponents, and reveling in victory with unapologetic intensity. That might be why their face-offs broke viewership records in college basketball, and now threaten to blow the roof off of every WNBA arena they step into. When the two first clashed, viral videos ignited an online frenzy. Did Reese take it too far with that pointed celebration after a victory? Did Clark underestimate her opponent's grit? The debates continued into the WNBA, where fans singled out every small gesture or passing comment as proof of animosity. Now, with these scheduled games in Baltimore, the feud is primed to explode in a truly spectacular fashion, overshadowing any typical storyline about rookies adjusting to the pro level. But even the fiercest rivalry needs a catalyst, and that catalyst has a name known across every corner of the sports world. There's a reason the term the Clark effect has taken over the sports landscape. Talk to any WNBA owner, broadcaster, or marketing executive, and you'll hear the same refrain. She doesn't just move the needle, she is the needle. It sounds like hyperbole until you see the numbers. Whenever Clark is scheduled to play, ticket websites crash under the surge of demand, seats fill up in record time, and merchandise sales soar to previously unthinkable heights. Before Clark, the WNBA had solid growth but still fought for attention among mainstream sports fans. Analysts touted incremental rises in viewership, but it still felt like the league was teetering on the edge of breaking out. Then Clark arrived, and what used to be a slow climb turned into a rocket launch. Suddenly, mainstream media was buzzing about a player who hit back-to-back three-pointers from the center court logo like it was second nature. Clips of her highlight reel circulated far beyond typical women's basketball circles, pulling in curious newcomers who had never watched a WNBA game in their lives. Executives scrambled to pivot marketing campaigns, featuring her in every promotional piece possible. Sponsor deals lined up, and partnerships that once seemed out of reach became plausible. She graced magazine covers, garnered endorsements, and turned typical regular season matchups into prime-time attractions. It didn't take long for her coaches, teammates, and even opponents to acknowledge that Clark's presence brings something truly magnetic. Now, when the Indiana Fever hit the road, fans of opposing teams actually circle those dates on their calendars. That's why the Mystics' relocation plan caused such a stir. If there's a guaranteed sellout in this league, it's any game featuring Caitlin Clark. Doing it in Baltimore, where Reese's backers feel strongly about defending their hometown hero, adds an extra layer of drama and an even more potent lure for curious spectators. Yet not everyone is celebrating Clark's rapid rise. In fact, some are pushing back with fervor. While Caitlin Clark fans rejoice in packed stadiums and national hype, Angel Reese's supporters have publicly questioned whether the love for Clark is overshadowing other talented players, especially Reese herself. From social media rants to pointed commentary on sports talk shows, these fans argue that the league and the media are funneling all attention to one person. They claim Reese's vibrant personality and her own impressive track record should be enough to command a similarly massive following. Still, the raw facts seem to paint a different picture. Whenever Clark steps onto the hardwood, ticket prices skyrocket, seats get snapped up in a matter of hours, and the broadcast viewership climbs. By contrast, games where Reese is the biggest attraction have respectable attendance numbers but don't trigger the same mania or record-breaking viewership. Critics argue that while Angel Reese's story is compelling, she hasn't yet displayed the jaw-dropping stats or game-changing flair that turns casual observers into die-hard fans. You can't blame Reese's fan base for feeling slighted, though. She was hailed as a new star destined to reshape women's basketball culture, until Clark stormed onto the professional scene and grabbed headlines with unstoppable scoring binges. And let's not forget the college championships, viral on-court celebrations, and interviews that catapulted Reese to fame. For a brief moment, it looked like Reese might take the lead in the WNBA's marketing push. But then Clark's highlight reels started going viral, overshadowing everything else. This leaves Reese's supporters in a tense defensive posture. They see the public enthrallment with Clark as a kind of personal snub, forgetting that both players could thrive in the spotlight if the narratives around them don't turn into zero-sum warfare. When the Mystics announced the Baltimore relocation, many of Reese's fans took to social media, claiming it was another attempt to piggyback off Clark's star power at the expense of the hometown hero. Their fear is that Baltimore will suddenly become Clark country, overshadowing the fact that it's Reese's birthplace. But the forces shaping these developments aren't just about fan rivalries. The WNBA has always faced questions about revenue, profitability, and how to capture mainstream attention. Owners and league officials publicly declare their intent to uplift every player, yet decisions often boil down to the numbers. So when you see a team like the Washington Mystics relocating 2 home games specifically tied to Caitlin Clark's visit, it's hard not to conclude that financial interests are at the helm. Media outlets, hungry for viewership, amplify any storyline involving Clark and Reese. They know these 2 names drive clicks and conversation, feeding the rivalry with every headline. Meanwhile, owners who once claimed it was unfair to spotlight a single player are scrambling to exploit the Clark mania. They're shifting venues, releasing special edition jerseys, and scheduling meet-and-greet events to reel in fans willing to pay top dollar. There's also a whiff of hypocrisy drifting through the league offices. Some executives spoke out against putting all our eggs in one basket by focusing on Clark. But they're now counting profits from the sold-out stadiums and skyrocketing merchandise sales she generates. They praise the entire WNBA in theory, but in practice, they know who butters their bread. The moment they realized Clark's arrival created a financial windfall, everything changed. This is where the conspiracy theories creep in. Certain Angel Reese diehards claim that owners are deliberately setting Reese up to lose ground in her own backyard. Smaller venue? Possibly higher ticket prices? The suggestion is that it's a strategic move to highlight Clark at Reese's expense. Others believe the WNBA is simply capitalizing on the best marketing angle they have. The unstoppable force meets the local star on her home turf. One scenario yields heartbreak for Reese fans, the other yields heartbreak for Clark fans, and both scenarios yield a massive payday for the league. But the story doesn't end with power plays and backroom deals. There's still the question of what happens when these two finally face off in Baltimore. Imagine the electricity of a jam-packed arena in the heart of Baltimore. Fans on both sides chanting for their favorite player. Angel Reese stepping onto the court in front of family, friends, and an entire city that has followed her journey from day one. Caitlin Clark carrying the unstoppable momentum of a trailblazing phenomenon whose highlight reels crash ticketing websites and overshadow every normal pre-game storyline. From a purely basketball standpoint, this is shaping up to be one of the WNBA's biggest draws in years. The tension will be palpable. The smallest detail, a missed layup, a spectacular three-pointer, could turn the crowd. Baltimore fans will bring an intense energy, partly supportive of Reese, partly curious about Clark's mystique. And that's the perfect scenario to spark an unforgettable rivalry game. If Reese struggles early, the atmosphere might shift uncomfortably, fueling online chatter that she can't handle the pressure, while her defenders blame the league for piling it on. If Clark drops a barrage of long-distance shots, the place might erupt in a mix of awe and frustration. Meanwhile, cameras will catch every expression on Reese's face. She's outspoken, she's prideful, and she won't hide her emotions if things don't go her way. On the flip side, Clark's calm intensity under duress has become legendary. Some call her unflappable, others call her coldly efficient. Adding to this combustible mix is the fact that both teams need wins. The Fever can't just depend on Clark's star power, they still need to rack up victories in the standings. The Mystics have their own ambitions and star players overshadowed in the media frenzy. The final scoreboard isn't just about pride or hype. It could decide playoff seeding and future endorsements for rising players. This sudden shift of 2 games to Baltimore might look like a sideshow, but in many ways, it's a turning point for the WNBA. It showcases a league that's grappling with explosive popularity, largely triggered by the Caitlin Clark effect, and trying to find ways to keep the momentum going. The contradiction of calling for equal attention while relentlessly marketing a single superstar is glaring. Yet it's hard to argue with results when record crowds line up to watch her play. Angel Reese is undeniably talented, brimming with personality, and cherished by her base. Her presence is critical to a WNBA that wants diversity in storylines. But her journey from celebrated college standout to overshadowed professional highlights the complexities of building a brand in the face of a phenomenon like Clark. The league is banking on both of them, hoping the rivalry stays fiery enough to keep fans tuned in, but not so explosive it leads to toxicity or burnout. For viewers, this is an invitation to see how far the WNBA can go when it embraces big personalities, hometown pride, and controversial scheduling decisions. Will moving these games to Baltimore become a blueprint for how teams chase profits around star matchups? Or will this relocation backfire, leaving local Mystics fans disillusioned and critics with more ammo to accuse the league of favoritism? One thing's for sure, the next time you hear that the Mystics and the Fever are squaring off, you'll know there's a lot more at stake than your average game. There's pride, legacy, and the future trajectory of women's basketball hanging in the balance. Every rebound, every three-pointer, every free throw attempt could shift the narrative that fans have been passionately arguing about since these two megawatt personalities first locked eyes on the court. We can all celebrate the rising tide that's lifting the WNBA. We can argue for a fairer distribution of attention among deserving athletes. We can hope that Angel Reese grows into the star many predicted, and that Caitlin Clark continues raising the bar for offensive play. But in the end, the reality is simple. The league thrives on rivalries and personalities, and this one is potent enough to captivate the sports world for years to come. So keep your eyes on those relocated games in Baltimore, because if you think you know how the script will unfold, you might be in for a shock. As the hype escalates and the drama intensifies, the only sure thing is that no one will walk away indifferent. Whether you're a diehard Reese fan, ready to cheer her every move, or a Clark supporter convinced your star can't be stopped, you'll be part of a moment that might just redefine the WNBA and women's sports forever. Will these Baltimore games become the catalyst that finally pushes Angel Reese to match the star power of Caitlin Clark? Or will they reinforce the narrative that Clark's spotlight simply can't be dimmed? The tension is set, and the only way to find out is to tune in when these two forces collide. Until then, keep watching, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. Because in a world where two rising icons command so much attention, you never know what shocking turn might come next.